I'm Deputy Chair. Councillor Bressie is online. We're just waiting for the Mayor to come on. Grantberg, Councillor Grantberg and Councillor Blackmore are also on this committee. Says so. Okay. Well, you got added then. Sorry. I'd like to move to go to delegations, and if you could introduce yourself, we'll have the Art Gallery of Grande Prairie do a presentation, please.
Sure. Oh, God. Hello. My name is Daniel Becker. I'm the Executive Director for the Art Gallery of Grande Prairie, and today I'm just doing an operational report for the year of 2022 to 2023. I believe the presentation is plugged in. Is it ready to go? Who's controlling it? Who do I look at? It started again. Katie. Should I exit the program? It's in. I have it in. Do you want to do that instead? It's in Microsoft Edge. Wait, are we looking at display? Do you want to change the display?
No, you don't.
Fantastic. Look at that. Technology. We're very complex monkeys. So just to kind of do an introduction, I'm just going to do a basic review of core operational parameters and just a general summary of impacts. I want to try to make this quick because I think I have 5 minutes. Generally speaking, staffing in hours, 10 full-time, 1 part-time. Our hours are Monday we are closed. That's the only day. This is the list of our staff for full transparency, you know. So if you do see them on the street, you can bug them as well. That's part of it. Move on. Just the general departments. We have exhibitions, learning, treks, and administration. And performance for last year, we had 13 exhibitions total through the exhibitions department. And beside that, I do have the general hours that they were up. Typically, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts requires hours for exhibitions, so I've included that. If you have questions on that, please provide them. This is our general data that we present for CADAC, the Canadian Arts data. Total number of exhibits was artists exhibited was 105. Total number of Indigenous artists 24. Total number of local artists 15. Total number of provincial and national artists 90. And total number of guest curators was 4. For our collections as well, we have around 850 pieces of art. Within that, the rough valuation was $1.39 million. I believe around 3 years ago, it was only 618, and I'll get into this in a little bit. We had a recent donation that increased that value by around 600,000, 500,000. So, and that was 5 pieces of art. But this is the current list of pieces that are certified by the federal government under the Movable Cultural Properties Act, which is essentially controls our export of these objects and usually increases the value. If you look here, we have quite a considerable list of Alan Sapps, which he's a very notable federal artist. Just moving on. For our learning department, last year we had around 256 camps, 16,000 participants. We gave out 10,000 creativity kits. If you've been to the gallery, those are the little things at the front desk. We had 34 organizations within city limits that took the creativity kits, and we have school partnerships in Grande Prairie, 70. We are currently working on a school and residency program with the Catholic schools. They wanted to use the time frame from February to June, right before the summer, when we get really busy, to make sure that each one of their classes gets through the organization at least once, and that's all free. So school partnerships, volunteers, 167 hours. Of course, that was a lot more before COVID. We had around 15 or 16, depending on our needs. And then last year, education did facilitate 2 events. One of them was the Sketch Party, which was a partnership with the Center for Creative Arts. That was for Alberta Culture Days. And this, is it in there? Oh, the other one isn't in there. I apologize. The city's Winter Festival. We had a Frosty Forms in the Gallery 3 and 4, which pulled about 350 people for the day, which was kind of incredible. So, and just these are the creativity kits that we make. Usually we make them for every exhibit. We make a new one. So just for the demographics and spread, this is essentially where all those creativity kits do get out to, north, south, east, and west. This is a sample of the organizations that we get them to, mostly schools, but we do get to organizations like Northreach Harm Reduction and places like that. It's kind of all age groups. It's anybody who really wants it. So TREX program, which is funded by the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, we had a roughly 107,000 engagements. It's hard to judge because it's just general attendance to the venues that we kind of provide these exhibits to. We had 11 venues that borrowed last year, 16 total exhibitions, with 10 community volunteers at each venue who help set up and take down. Generally speaking, those exhibits typically cost $50 to $100 for the organizations, so they're having a massive saving. And usually we cover transportation and costs. So, and this is a map of the places that we did exhibit our TREX pieces in. This is 2021 to 2023, just to give you an idea of the spread. I just want to make a note. The place right beside Edmonton. Edmonton does have its own TREX program, and the border is literally right there. I just think it's kind of hilarious. So I always have to point that out. I'm like, why are we out there? But that's just what it is. For administration, we had some major accomplishments. We did have we did wrap up a 7-year ongoing CC PERB application. So as I mentioned before, that's $600,000 in worth of the art. That was 5 pieces from an artist named Dean Drever. Each piece was roughly around $150,000. And that was a donation that was sent to us in 2014 after he exhibited here. We submitted the applications and we finally got word that they were approved this year. So that was a 7-year application. I'm going to go back a slide. I'm sorry. We did wrap up our 4-year application to the Alberta Museum Association for the Recognized Museum program. So now we are certified under the AMA as a recognized museum. And we won $25,000 from them kind of because we can qualify for the grants, we also qualified for that. So then we won that as well. So I'm especially proud of that because I wrote that. And I'm very happy it happened. I was like, money, sorry. And then just general list of kind of accomplishments, sorry. I'll move on. Dean Drever. And this is just kind of like a very basic just overview of where we kind of get our funds from. We get it from the Alberta Foundation for the Arts. We get it from the city. We get it from the county. We get it from the MD of Greenview. In some years, we've gotten it from Saddle Hills. It depends. But it's around $850,000 depending on the year. Last year, we got $40,000 from the city for the basement renovation project, as well as another $30,000 for special costs. So the city was $373,000 last year. This year we won't be getting that. So that is kind of like our hovering point. And last year the Museum Assistance Program put on by the Canadian Heritage, they gave us $65,000. So that kind of bumped our revenue up last year at a kind of a special amount. This is kind of where we generally sit without all those special kind of revenues. So just in kind of give kind of an overview of value, I suppose. In 2019, the Canadian Museum Association and the Canadian Archives and Library, National Archives and Library. They produced a study with Oxford Economics that essentially valued the average value of a museum visit to $43. Essentially, that's what it is. Our attendance is free, completely free. Our general attendance would be around 32,000 people a year. Based on that, we're providing a value of $1.5 million, generally speaking. So, and impacts. This is where I get into the cheesy slides. I'm sorry. I just, you get to a point. I have 4 points to make just to kind of how organizations like ours impact communities. And I've made them a little bit cheesy. I apologize for that. But the first one is combating the couch potato, getting people out of their house. One of the core operational mandates of our organization is providing people unique experiences to get out to on a regular basis, new things for them to get out of their house and get into the community and experience things. I do believe that COVID gave a very good litmus test for how people go crazy when they can't get out. And I do think this is one of the core things that we provide is opportunities for recreation and leisure. So the second point is neuroplasticity. And I know this is diving a little bit deep into psychology and biology. Generally speaking, psychologists have kind of confirmed that new experiences and new actions, new hobbies elevate your ability to have, it increases your neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to create new neural pathways. So by providing new experiences, new exhibits, new things to contemplate within our galleries, we do afford Grande Prairians in general the ability to have a more adaptable brain, the ability to adapt when trauma or moments of change happen. They're more able to improvise and change and overcome adversity. So, and number 4, this one's going a little bit deeper into philosophy. Lev Tolstoy was a Russian philosopher, and he argued that the primary purpose of art is to allow people to see the perspective of the person who creates it. There are a plethora of studies out there that kind of prove that reading and art and culture do increase everybody's ability to have feelings of empathy. And I did make a catchy slide there, I feel like, illustrating the area of the brain where the empathy, your empathy generally resides. Pardon? Yeah, well, he was Russian, so he wrote a book called War and Peace. So, but him, Lev Tolstoy, and Dostoevsky were 2 formative writers during the late 1800s who essentially kind of laid the groundwork for modern politics and kind of like the questions of whether punishment, how punishment occurs, and whether it's a crime. Those ideas. So it really is one of those great thinkers who assisted us in getting to where we are as a modern society. So, and then finally, I've just kind of said, unfortunately, we've reached critical mass. I do believe that providing people these services in the ability to reflect on other people's experiences, to experience art, culture, etc., it does give them more critical thinking skills, and it does allow them to be a little bit more self-aware and make better decisions on their lives. So I provided that little stat on the bottom, which was in the last presentation, but 96% of Albertans believe heritage resources are important for lifelong learning. So, and that's about it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Daniel. My apologies for not making it to the art auction on Saturday night. A hernia operation got in the way of that, so I'd like to open it up for questions. And Councillor Berg.
Yeah, thank you, Chair O'Connor. And again, congratulations on a successful art auction. It was a lot of fun. And I know it's been a few years since we've actually had one in person. So I think the last one was online, and maybe even pre-COVID was the last in-person one. So just actually, you were talking about the empathy and different things like that. I just kind of want to comment on your current exhibition about Aboud Salman. And he is an artist from Syria, and one of the things that I picked up at the artist talk, I learned a lot because in Gallery 2, you've got 2 walls with basically him telling the story and images of what it was like in Syria before the war, and then in illustrations during. And then what I actually really loved was they were quite dark, and then there was a different tone to them as it shows him coming across and then coming to Canada. So just again, you were talking about how you have certain goals and targets. Just want to bring to the attention to the public that the current exhibition does exactly that.
If I can talk to that point as well. There's an interesting kind of array of art that is presented, you know, in the field, and that's exhibited. His is very interesting because it's very tied to his identity. He draws a lot of images out of his experiences, his past, where he comes from, etc. You know, he grew up. He's from a town that's literally on the border of Syria and Iraq. And if you know about the region and kind of how the borders are made up, the British and the French chopped up the region and essentially managed it to kind of get the best revenue from oil products and the best relationships with the governing bodies at the time. Just as like in northern Syria, you know, you have the Kurds that are essentially cut in half by the Turkish border. Down in the south, you have the same kind of thing. In his art, he has a lot of imagery that he referred to as Babylonian. He didn't see, apologies, he didn't see himself as Syrian. He saw himself as Babylonian. So, and he draws a lot of like very specific images, very specific, you know, symbols. And when you get into art examination, essentially whenever you have something that has a symbol on it, it's a specific meaning because it has a specific shape. Then whenever somebody comes to that, there is associated meaning with that. That's when you get into abstract art. Abstract art attempts to disassociate from symbols because it's trying to make the viewer experience it purely from their experiences and not bringing the artist's perspective into the experience. So then when we get symbols like this, it is very much the artist telling a story and kind of presenting their information. So he is a great example of how, you know, presenting a colorful and rich palette of pieces is a great way to enliven the story that he's had and really allow people to engage with it in a way that isn't just hearing words, you know, going to a lecture. Actually feeling like, you know, having, you know, the colors interact with your brain and talking about neuroplasticity, you know, essentially every time you have a new experience, that's a new neural pathway firing. And every time that happens, you know, your brain has to adapt. Psychologists, there's kind of one way that I know this because one of my best friends growing up became a PhD candidate and now harasses me with all the information he knows. One of the ways that psychologists kind of try to get people to increase their neuroplasticity and allow for, you know, adapting to new experiences is by hardwiring your brain to create new pathways. And one of those ways that they get them to do that is to do new things that you've never done before. He said essentially playing ping pong with your wrong hand is like a really good example of that. You know, going to a region that you've never been before. So you can you can hardwire your brain to increase.
I can see the passion coming out, and we've got a few delegations.
Sorry, I'm going to shut up.
So I want to thank you very much. The exhibition is extraordinary. I will guarantee you, if you go see it, you will see something different every single time. So it does open pathways. So thank you very much for your presentation. And we're going to change the agenda just a little bit. I would like to have a motion to go in camera.
Sure.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay.
I guess I will make that motion, Acting Chair O'Connor.
Well, thank you very much.
That council go in camera.
Okay. And Mr. Goldie, if you would like to, we need to call a question. And how do you vote, Mayor Clayton?
We're just trying to unmute. I vote in favor, and if I can just ask for a minute to get set on to headset. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor, okay, you voted. Thank you very much. That carried unanimously. hopefully we can. One, thank you for that slight recess. I'd like to go to section 4 reports and 4.1 service area updates. They changed the number. You got to upload there. Anyway, Miss McCachran. Oh, Miss Casually, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. So the service area update for community social development. Youth Week is May 1st to 7th this year, and it will host a variety of activities and workshops, including recreation, learning, and exploring what Grande Prairie has to offer during a week of free activities for youth ages 12 plus. So all of the event details are available on the city's event calendar. For under housing and homelessness, the RFP for the coordinated care campus service provision has been initiated and closes on May 8th. Renovations of the 63 supportive housing units remain to be on target for the completion date at the end of May. Under enforcement services, a preliminary meeting has taken place between enforcement, the management team of the Community Knowledge Campus, variety of school divisions, and football league stakeholders regarding the upcoming football season, with a focus to maximize the guest experience for those attending football games hosted at the venue. For the fire department, in operations, all grass fire equipment has been serviced and placed on trucks as they enter the summer season, and crews have already responded to several grass fires. Under sports development, wellness, and culture, the department has completed a comprehensive review of the event permit process. So following numerous engagement sessions with local community groups and event hosts, a new form and landing page has been created on the city's website, and that can be accessed by visiting cityofgp.com/event permits. For transit, the Youth Fairs Administration has engaged with superintendents of both the public and Catholic school board divisions, and it was agreed that the program will commence at the beginning of the school year, so in September of 2023, and that individual schools will be distributing the transit passes to their students in September, and ongoing conversations will take place with Peace Wapiti and other private schools within the next few weeks. And that is the end of the director's update.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Cazalet. My apologies. Any questions for Ms. Cazalet? Seeing none, I'd like to call up 4.2, the fire department impact. And when you get a chance, please introduce yourselves, and the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes or more, depending.
Thank you to the chair. I'm Preben Boston, Fire Chief, and with me here today I have Deputy Chief Mark Van Werkhoven. Thank you for the opportunity to present as it relates to current EMS service levels and the impacts to the fire department. We appreciate council and committee's interest around this important topic. As requested by council, we have compiled background material and matrix related to this subject that you now have in front of you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce Deputy Chief Mark Van Werkhoven. Mark is a registered advanced care paramedic and has been a first responder in the Grande Prairie region for over 20 years. This includes several years with Grande Prairie Regional EMS and Peace Country Health EMS, which were the predecessor of the current Alberta Health Services EMS delivery model. His most recent EMS experience has been with STARS as a flight paramedic, where he spent 15 years until joining the fire department about a year and a half ago. Before we get into the report, I would like to give a brief overview of our history with medical response. The Grande Prairie Fire Department enrolled in the medical co-response program back in 1988. We had some capacity to support EMS in the delivery of their service, and the partnership worked well for everyone involved. Over time, we have adjusted our involvement to ensure the appropriate level of service is delivered based on the needs of EMS and our capacity. The intent was to augment their service when we were available. We are now seeing a trend where the fire department is being relied on more often for EMS delivery, and this reliance is starting to impact other areas of our service. And that is the reason we are here today. So I'll now turn it over to Mark to speak a little more in detail about the report.
Thank you, Chief. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation or any technology to use, so hopefully we won't run into those bugs again. Nothing in this report is intended to criticize the emergency service operators and dispatchers, paramedics, and RCMP members that continue to go above and beyond every day. Committee will likely note that the analytics we are presenting in the report before you vary in some degree from those presented by AHS EMS. We can't comment on the methodology that determined the current metro urban response targets that EMS reports. However, we can offer a couple of relevant observations. In order to do so, I need to explain how EMS calls are prioritized using the Medical Priority Dispatch System, MPDS in short. And I ask you to bear with me here. I don't like to get into the weeds, but this is very, very relevant to the variances, if you will, in our statistics versus their analytics. The MPDS system is an internationally recognized system used by numerous EMS services, including AHS EMS, that prioritizes medical calls for service using a standard set of questions and protocols. Medical incidents are prioritized alphanumerically from alpha to echo. Alpha calls are presumed to be non-life-threatening, and most EMS systems respond to this category with no lights, no siren, non-emergency response. However, it's important to recognize this category still involves some injuries of consequence, such as a broken arm, a broken leg, or a dog attack. Bravo and Charlie incidents are generally considered mid-acuity incidents. The MPDS question and answers have determined that something about this call merits a rapid response. The category also tends to be a bit of a default for third-party calls where limited direct information of the incident is available. For example, a 911 caller drives by a motor vehicle collision. They don't necessarily stop. There may be no injuries or there may be multiple serious injuries. Until the first responders arrive on scene, we just don't know. Delta incidents are considered high acuity incidents, often verified by a first-party caller. It provides for multi-agency response, which often includes one or more EMS units along with the fire department and possibly under other first responders. And lastly, are echo incidents. These are often described as the patient is dying right now and requires the closest first responders immediately. Responses typically involve one or more EMS units along with the fire department, and in fact, some models may include the closest police officer with an AED. The targets related to response times EMS presented do not appear to reflect the total number of emergency incidents EMS responds to in Grande Prairie. Specifically, the presentation referred to response targets for, and I quote from the presentation, Delta and Echo incidents. Response targets and analytics for Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie incidents were not noted in the presentation. However, to the best of our knowledge, EMS continues to respond to Bravo and Charlie incidents as emergencies with a lights and sirens response. It's also important to highlight that the fire department responds to some predetermined incidents in what we would refer to as a conditional manner, meaning if EMS is delayed 15 minutes or more. It's important to recognize the impact this consideration may have on our analytics versus EMS analytics. These incidents may be a small subset of the total overall volume of EMS incidents, therefore having limited impact on EMS performance indicators, while simultaneously demonstrating a significant impact to our analytics, given that these types of responses become a higher ratio of our overall medical responses. In summary, despite the variance of what our analytics may show versus those of EMS as presented, we didn't notice anything that brings either data set into disrepute to the extent of the EMS data that was presented. However, it's also important to recognize the current EMS AHS performance targets of a response interval of 12 minutes over 90% of the time and limited to what appear to be limited to Delta and Echo instance is a variance from standards such as NFPA 1710 or those previously followed by Grande Prairie Regional EMS. Those standards stipulate a total time from 911 call to arrival on scene of less than 8 minutes over 90% of the time for all Bravo Charlie Delta incidents, Delta and Echo incidents, excuse me. And in fact, there's also a performance target of 14 minutes over 90%, less than 14 minutes over 90% of the time for all Alpha incidents. I appreciate the committee's attention through what we believe to be very important background to the report in front of you and any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, do we have questions? Councillor Bosch?
Thank you for coming in this morning. Oh, and thank you, Councillor O'Connor. The question I have is on one of the graphs here, page 5 of 12, the one that primary patient care, no ambulance available. The time call out is 22 minutes. Can you, is that a Delta Echo call or is that Alpha to Charlie?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Bosch. That would be, it could be any determinant in that EMS can request us for any and all determinants. Typically, our determinants that we proactively respond to are in the Delta and Echo category or time-based in the Bravo and Charlie category. So I can't comment on specifically what determinant that would be. What I could say is that 25-28, if I believe is what you're looking at, is the 90th percentile of responses that we're waiting for EMS to arrive on scene, providing first
Figure
response.
6.
I'm sorry, figure 5. I'll just...
Yeah.
The 22 hours and 13 seconds, the last quarter.
Oh, okay. So what does that mean?
Why
is that so high?
It's high because of the multiplier effect of the increased number of medical first responses we saw in that quarter, combined with the additional time that we're waiting on scene, awaiting EMS arrival. And so that has a multiplying effect. We take that call volume times the average number of minutes they're waiting on scene, and that generates a time on task number for us. We saw in that last quarter of 2022, both the number of first response calls go up quite significantly, along with the average 90th and maximum time that we were waiting on scene for EMS to arrive.
Would you say that typically calls to service for RCMP, now this might be totally different for you, around 50% of the calls to service are for our unhoused or vulnerable population base. Would a lot of this time that you're spending go to the same clientele that you're spending more time there than EMS would be currently? Well, not more time, but additional time that you weren't before. Is it the same client base?
Through the chair, our analytics don't distinguish that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Clayton, then Councillor Bressy, then Councillor Berg. Mayor Clayton. You're muted. Thank you. Lost you there. Sorry, Mayor Clayton, you're breaking up terribly. I'll come back to you in a minute. Once you get better coverage, I'll move on to Councillor Bressy.
Needed a second unmute.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me, Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Go ahead. Okay, I lost you again. Okay, Councillor Bussey, then I'll come back to Mayor Clayton.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the report. It definitely gets me thinking a lot about, are there opportunities for more local dispatch on medical calls? I'm glad we're moving to local dispatch with police calls. My question, though, is when our fire department responds to a medical call and EMS isn't there, so they're caring for somebody that needs medical care, but they don't have the appropriate certification to be doing that, what kind of liability exposure do both our individual firefighters have and the city have when we're on these calls?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, we have had some preliminary conversations with the city solicitor on this specific topic. I wouldn't feel comfortable or prepared to speak to it any further. I'd have to defer to his expertise. But it is a topic of interest, and it's something that we flagged internally as well.
Okay, thank you. And Mayor Clayton, if you would like to unmute, there you go.
Great. Thanks, Councillor O'Connor. My question is for Fire Chief Boston or possibly Ms. Cajolet. I understand from my conversations at Mid-State City Mayors that there's about half a dozen municipalities that currently offer integrated ambulance or EMS and fire services. I'm wondering if you can clarify for me the municipalities, to your knowledge, that currently offer integrated service.
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, I'll pass this one over to Mark to answer.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Chief. Through the chair. Currently, we show, and some of this is, although not specifically obvious, but somewhat captured in one of the last figures on page 8. And we show Red Deer, Strathcona County, Lethbridge, Fort McMurray, St. Albert, Spruce Grove, and Leduc as fully integrated services. In other words, meaning they have some form of contract with AHS EMS fee for the services, fees and revenue for the services they provide.
Perfect, and thank you. I was aware that it was more of a rhetorical question, so I appreciate you clarifying for the rest of council. And I think that further conversation would be valuable as we go down this exploratory path in regards to the best service in regards to fire and EMS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Berg?
Yeah, thank you, Chair O'Connor. And my line of questioning isn't that much different than the mayor's around integration, which I think is going to be essentially the first point. We can debate that once I make that. But would it be fair to say that the lack of available ambulances on promptly or on time is negatively impacting your ability and your safety?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and through the chair. I think it does impact us on several fronts, and one of the direct impact is when we have a high-risk incident where our firefighters are doing work as firefighters. We typically have EMS on standby, as any high-risk occupation would ask for, and we seem to struggle to get that coverage as well because they are either short-staffed or out of unit. So that is kind of one of the bigger options for us, is to look at, is there something we can do internally to cover that off if EMS can't be there for us. The other part of the impact, I think, is the time on task. So just very recently, I spoke with a platoon chief yesterday. We had a fire recently where we had two single-family dwellings involved, and when that call came in, we had one unit out on a medical call and another unit returning. So it stretches our resources thin when we spend more time on medical services, where we were sort of initially intended to augment the service but not necessarily deliver it. does have a direct impact for sure.
Yeah, and so thank you for that. And thanks for your service to the community, to all first responders. I know that you seem to have had an unusual amount of residential fires here over the last week or so. And Councillor O'Connor, anytime you're ready for business.
Yes, Mayor Clayton, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Thank you for that. I just have one more question, and I'm not really sure who's best to answer it. I understand from conversations with Mayor Rod Frank in Strathcona that it may have been ongoing or it may be new, but they've chose to fund the municipality funds a third EMS person in the ambulances because of situations as are described when fire is supporting EMS and two EMS members are attending to an individual who requires health care. There are times when the fireman then leaves the fire truck to drive the EMS to drive the ambulance to the hospital. And so to prevent that, I understand Strathcona County is funding using municipal tax dollars to fund that third EMS. Can you tell me if there's any other municipalities that are looking at that right now or that are doing that service model?
Mark?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Mayor. Yeah, the Strathcona model is a somewhat unique model. I'm not aware of anybody else that's doing that specifically. Having said that, it's not uncommon for these integrated services that we referenced already, or for that matter, non-integrated services, to augment the service levels provided. So that's an excellent example, Mayor, that you brought up. Strathcona puts a third paramedic on the ambulance, and I believe, and I can't speak for them, their analytics to your suggestion suggests that limits the amount of times fire trucks or other fire resources have to respond. There are other models that have some level of primary care or advanced care paramedic on their fire engines or on separate apparatus outside of the engines. Those are certainly those other models are certainly out there that go beyond Strathcona. If I could, the last sort of statement I'd make around that is that's not much different than, for example, municipalities that have an enhanced RCMP or other policing presence. This is something that they've chosen to do as a municipality to enhance what the base services are, if you will, that are provided from those contracts between that integrated fire service and AHS EMS.
Okay.
Councillor O'Connor.
Yeah, you just broke up a little bit there. Try that again.
If I could just have a follow-up on that.
You're always welcome
Okay.
here, Bersh.
Just a question, if you can hear me. The other consideration, and maybe a better question for EMS. I wonder.
No, you're breaking up considerably.
Because it probably includes their collective. But is there a cost that could be a ambulance driver, therefore the third person? Sorry, Councillor O'Connor, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back again. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks for that. Sorry, not sure what part of you got that. It may be a question better for EMS, but to your knowledge, is there a classification within their collective bargaining or within their organization that can be an ambulance driver without being a healthcare attendant?
Go ahead, Mark.
Through the chair, I think I got most of that, Mayor. And just to reiterate, is there a means within their collective agreement, their policies, processes, or legislation to have a third member on that ambulance that is strictly a driver? We would have to validate this with EMS, but I don't see any reason why they couldn't have an EMR as a driver and two primary care or two advanced care or a combination of both within that ambulance model. In fact, we're seeing right now, due to some of the staffing challenges, we're seeing occasions where they're pairing an emergency medical responder with a primary care or advanced care paramedic as two practitioners on an ambulance. Can't speak to the rate or frequency in which that's occurring, but our firefighters have made those observations.
Okay, does that answer your question, Mayor Clayton?
Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's no other questions, I will look to Councillor Berg for business.
Yeah, thank you, Chair O'Connor. So there's 3 items. I'm just going to put them all under one motion. I would like committee to recommend to council that 1, we advocate provincially for immediate and sustainable funding for fire medical response services provided by the Grande Prairie Fire Department. Number 2, advocate for Alberta Health Services to develop a strategy and action plan to incentivize recruitment and retention of paramedics within the region and the north as a whole. And number 3, direct administration to research possible amendments to the Alberta 911 program standards that make provincial funding contingent on mandatory answer times, 15 seconds or less 95% of the time, for both municipal GP 911 and secondary ECMP EMS centers.
Okay, that motion is in order. We'll call the question or debate first. Yep. I see no debate, so we'll call a question. Mayor Clayton, how do you vote? Mayor, are you in favor?
Mayor Clayton in favor.
Thank you.
In favor.
Thank you. Got it. Okay, that carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation. Sorry for the delays today. That was a long meeting.
Thank you very much.
We'll now slip down to item number 8, outstanding items list. Ms. Cajolet.
Thank you. Through the chair, all items are on track to be completed with the dates identified, and no further amendments are requested.
Okay, and who will like to do the business? Mr. Berg.
Yes, I would like council to receive the April 25th outstanding items list as amended.
Thank you. Call the question.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
Okay, thank you. That carried unanimously. And with that, I'll call the question to adjourn. I'm just going to adjourn then.